Welcome to Crystal Clear. This podcast is a space for real stories, raw moments, and the clarity that comes when we finally understand our why. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine. I'm so excited.
Hey.
Dara Chike-Obi. She's a women's health advocate and innovator who spends her career solving unmet needs, from postpartum care as founder of Griot to aesthetics with 360 aesthetics, with a unique vantage point on the full life cycle of women's health. She's here to talk about the gaps she's fixing and how women can advocate for themselves at any age. Dara, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have
Thank you for
you.
having me. What an intro. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, let's get right into
Let's
it.
get right to it.
So, the first question I have is your career path
Mhm.
from becoming a lawyer to getting your MBA to founding Griot to aesthetics is anything but linear.
Yeah.
What invisible thread connects these leaps, especially around women's unmet needs?
I would say that the biggest invisible thread is essentially how I grew up. I am the only girl and the youngest out of 5 kids. And unfortunately, my mother passed away when I was very young. I was only 6 years old. Also, I am a first generation Nigerian American. So imagine growing up in a household full of Nigerian men. One thing or one important thing about that scenario is that I didn't have a female role model to tell me or show me what to expect as I got older and encountered new life phases. So because of that, I've kind of been, I guess, using my ability to observe and connect with people to kind of build what I think a thriving, vibrant life is as a woman, rather than following in the footsteps of somebody that I would have modeled my life after.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, what that experience would have been like,
Yeah.
but truly it has shaped you, to becoming the person that you are. And
Yeah.
I just have to say, as a mother and someone who had a mother, in their lives, like you are just doing such an incredible job. And
Oh, thank you for
you should
saying
be
that.
so proud of yourself.
I am very proud, but I will also say that even though I grew up in a very male dominated household, I was completely covered and loved as, the only girl,
Yeah.
right? So I guess one thing to note is that, the expectations that were placed on me by my father were the same expectations that he placed on his sons, right? Granted, I was, maybe some would consider, spoiled, but I always had to deliver with my grades in terms of respect, in terms of my reputation, in making sure that I could be someone that my father would be proud of. So I really do think like holding daughters up to the same expectations that you have for your sons, or at least in my case, made all the difference in the world.
Oh, 1,000%. And do you feel like that's rooted more so from your father being Nigerian?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely more so from my father being Nigerian. You have to think about like first generation immigrants, right? Like our parents migrated here. Some of them came from really, really great careers and lives. Some of them did not, but coming to a new country where you look completely different than anybody else, this is not your first language. There is just an element of survival that you have to have in order to achieve your dreams. So I think him having to do that by himself with 5 children, as he's a young doctor trying to grow his practice along with some other side businesses, it was very much you need to learn not only how to survive but thrive, and here are the weapons and the tools to do so. So start figuring out how to use them.
Right. And
Yeah.
instilling that in your children.
Oh,
Which
absolutely.
clearly it paid off. Because all of you guys are really impressive. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
hats
you.
off to your father, whom
Yeah.
I've met, and to him and
Yes.
his lovely wife. They are incredible and such
Yes.
fun, kind people. So it kind of
Absolutely.
feels like he's reaping the rewards and the benefits, the fruits of his labor, with his career and most importantly his children.
Oh, absolutely. He's in Where is he now? I don't even know. He's been gone for 2.5 weeks, but he was in Tanzania
Wow.
on safari. And he's 80, and he went by himself. And he was like, called him the other day, and he's like, yeah, my friends are meeting me up. Love you, daughter. Bye. And I'm like, okay, well,
like, I gotta go.
yeah.
Girl.
I was like, well,
I'm
call
living
me
my
back when
best
you get
life.
home. But that's the kind of energy that I was brought up with. You know, life doesn't stop when you have kids, and it doesn't stop when they get older. Like, you have to stay curious. You have to stay busy. He's still practicing at 80.
That's
you know,
incredible.
He's definitely slowed down a lot, but this love of life and constant learning and growth and evolution, that never ends, at least how I see it.
Yeah, that's incredible. So let's talk about women's health across life stages. So you've consulted with women from their 20s to their 60s. What's the most consistently overlooked health need you see, and why do you think it persists across generations?
You know, the interesting thing is, it's a health need, or maybe I wouldn't define it as a health need as much as, you know, something that's very integral in addressing your health, and that is self-advocacy. And my first encounter with how much that lacks in women's health is after I had my child, and being around women who were in similar positions and them not feeling safe enough or empowered enough to talk about, you know, their birthing plans, ask questions about postpartum, and or talk about their mental health. And this is around, I would say, like late 20s, early 30s, I encountered these women, which is why I started my company, Grio. But on the latter end, at 360 Plastic Surgery, our family medical practice, I consult, and I encounter women from their 20s to their 60s every single week. And what I notice is a lack of confidence in the natural evolution of their beauty, in the natural evolution of their bodies, and the feeling that they are not allowed to say, I don't like this, I want to change it for me. It's almost as if they apologize for deigning to exist, right? So it's not necessarily an unmet health need. There are a lot of them, which I can go in on. But it first starts with women positively and full-throatedly advocating for themselves whenever they have to.
Right.
Yeah.
So aesthetics is often dismissed as vanity, but you've worked to reframe it as a part of holistic health.
Yeah.
How do you help reconcile the needs without the guilt?
Well, I never feel guilty.
Yeah. Let's be clear.
Let's be very clear. Maybe this is also something that I learned growing up with men, but I am not going to feel guilty for anything that I don't think I should feel guilty for, and women shouldn't either. We are the bearer of life. We are the goddesses of the world, and to apologize for wanting to improve is insane to me. So that's the mindset that I approach these women with, right? I think that if you think about it, right, whenever you're super stressed, not you personally, but whenever we're super stressed, we can see it in our skin.
Right.
We break out. We don't sleep as well. We don't eat as well. So this whole mind-body connection is very real, and how you present yourself to the world has a very real impact in how, honestly, your day-to-day, how you feel about yourself, how people respond to you. It's all comprehensive, and to kind of pick that apart as something that's vain, it's nonsensical. And then also in this society where youth and beauty are prioritized as women's main tool, after a certain age, things change. So why wouldn't I want to grow into my beauty at this phase, right?
Absolutely.
So to me, it's just kind of restructuring the mindset. It's just not true. Like vanity, like aesthetics is not vanity. It's just a part of your health and wellness.
I feel like social media it's a detriment, but also beneficial.
Yes.
You know, in terms of like you see my algorithm, like is a lot of facelifts and Botox and filler and celebrities and you know, because to me that it's important to me. I really genuinely care about how I feel, and I look and feel my best at 43. Yeah. And
Yep.
a lot of that is thanks to your husband,
Yeah.
thanks to you guys, your practice,
Thank you.
truly, because, you know, with the subtleties like Botox, filler, lasers, skincare to bigger procedures. You know, I had a tummy tuck postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
My body totally changed. And I recognized that no amount of working out or weight loss was ever going to get this tummy the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for me, going the plastic surgery route was the right decision for me and the best decision. And I feel like I'm helping women now because they'll message me and they'll be like, "Hey girl, what the hell
Yes.
are you doing? Like you're literally aging in reverse."
Yes.
And
Let
there's
me tell you guys, Crystal has been the full-throated, most open person about her procedures since we moved here over 10 years ago. Crystal has been banging the drum, and not in the way where it's like, look at me, but it's like, you too can feel this good.
And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
I love that you were helping women, you know, embrace it. And, you know, there's no guilt. There is no guilt.
No.
And I am finding when women listen, I didn't post on Instagram when I got my tummy tuck. You know, I'm obviously sharing it now, and there's no shame in my game. I have no shame associated with that. I think, like, I can't tell you how many women message me and they're like, "What are you doing? You look incredible. You're aging in reverse." And I'm always like, Pilates, tummy tuck. They're like, "How do you get your stomach like that?" I'm like, "It was a tummy tuck, but Pilates have helped me, you know, with my definition and
Absolutely.
like, yeah, diet, exercise, all the basic things, but also Botox and filler, you know, like those things." And then of course I always refer them to you guys,
Yeah.
but, and I can't tell you how many women are like, "Thank you for being honest.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that."
That's the drawback that you mentioned about social media. I think it can take a good and pure thing and make it performative or superficial. And, you know, when we talk about Botox and fillers, right? Like we're in our 40s and I think the big thing on the horizon is perimenopause and menopause, right? So when I talk to women our age that are interested in doing like a facial refresh, I'm not talking to them about, oh, they want to, you know, refine the tip of the nose. They're saying, listen, my skin is super dry now because I'm perimenopausal. I'm noticing that I'm lacking collagen in my face and certain things are starting to sag. The hollowness in my eyes, I don't mind the hollowness per se, but the skin is a little crepey. So now we're going in and we're fixing real issues in a subtle way that addresses the woman's beauty at each phase, right? So it's not this superficial, I want to look hot in pictures, and that's not superficial.
Yeah.
Go back and say that. If that's all you want, then that is totally fine. But there's so much more to be gained from treating your mind and your body together in terms of health and wellness journey.
Truly. And when you are your best, you're showing up for the world differently. You're showing up for your children differently, your partner differently, your friends, your family.
Yeah.
Like it truly, like you said, it's, you know, the outside in. And when you have a different self-confidence and a different self-love, it transcends, right?
I love when you said self-love. So many times the outside doesn't match the inside. So think about it when you're in your 30s, right? You're kind of spending that decade like being married, having kids, like doing a lot of things that kind of set your family up and not necessarily focusing on yourself. But during that period, you learn a lot. You become wiser. I mean, we multitask like a mofo, right?
Yeah.
But it's tiring and you can see it on our face and in our body. And that disconnect between how we feel internally, how strong and smart we feel, sometimes it doesn't translate on the outside. So when you're able to bring those two together, I always say, like, it is the most powerful tool that a woman can have to look as good as she feels. I always say I've never felt stronger, faster, smarter, better, more beautiful than I have in my 40s. And I'm someone who's always been maybe a little too confident or overly confident, you know, but no, it really does get better. You know, the wisdom that I've gained over the last 10, 15 years,
Oh, it's same.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. My mom recently told me that she's never felt and looked better than when she was in her 50s. I was like, okay, well, I look and feel incredible in my 40s.
Yes.
So that is just amazing. I love to hear that. It makes me excited. There used to be so much shame,
Yes.
around like aging and women wanting to hide their age. And hell no. Now it's
Mm.
like when you look and feel your best, you want to celebrate that. It's like a
Yes.
right, a passage, a badge of honor. Like when we
Yes.
did our Pilates class for our
Oh,
birthday,
yeah.
our
Yes, yes,
Pilates
yes.
instructor was like, it was me, you, and Liz,
Mm-hmm.
44, 43, 42. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, oh, we have some birthdays in the house. They're turning 21. And all three of us were like,
Ooh, yeah.
no. Like, we are in our 40s. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I think that's the hack, actually, when you mentioned your mom telling you she hasn't felt, I mean, the best she felt was when she was in
Yeah.
her 50s. There's something that's kind of cropping up called intergenerational friendships, right? You have one with Natalie.
Yes.
But it reminds me of, how I said I'm always observing different women to kind of help build out my future or how I want to live my life.
Yeah.
And when I was in my early 20s, I knew I didn't want to have kids till much, much later. But I looked at women who were in their mid 30s that were thriving after having kids. I'm like, okay, well, what did they do?
Mhm.
So by the time I get to that point, like I'm exactly where I want to be and how I want to feel. Now I'm in my 40s. I'm looking at women in their 60s
Right.
that have grandkids that are super strong, have energy, traveling the world. I'm like, okay, what are they
Right.
doing so I can start preparing? So when I'm in my 60s, I'm living the life that I want to live. And I think that moms are finally, and this is just my observation,
Mhm.
but I feel like it's a different day where moms are now talking about their experiences as just being a girl. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, would your mom have had that conversation with you maybe 15, 20 years ago?
No, never.
So like now there's this like TikTok trend that's like, oh, she's just a girl, and it's cutting to like your grandma doing something
Yeah.
fun for the first time, or your mom doing something for the first time. And so I think that community, the intergenerational
Yeah.
community, needs to be stronger. Like older women need to give advice to the younger girls, and the younger girls need to actually listen, because
Right.
God, you don't realize how quickly the years go by
So
when you're young, right? You think you're going to stay and look the same way forever. But if you don't have these conversations, you're going to be caught off guard.
Right.
Right. Especially when you hit 30s. So anyways, I love that your mom is kind of giving you insight into how great it can be.
Yeah, truly. I feel
Mhm.
very lucky. And my cousins too.
Yeah.
Susie's 50.
I mean,
like,
you come from a family of just queens, so
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm so lucky. And I truly, look up to all of them for so many different reasons.
Mhm.
It's, a big family of women. And
Yeah.
for that, I am very lucky.
And
I'm
it's
very
funny, like even just like picturing your family, I never imagined the men. Almost all of them have partners, but I'm like, I
so
really
funny.
don't know what they look like, and they are at every single event. But they
Hilarious.
stay in the background.
They
let
do.
y'all do your thing.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, like last year for Mother's Day, it was a girls' trip and we went to Cabo. This year for Mother's Day, we had a girls only brunch with all of our kids. Like, it's so funny.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so
it's
true.
great that y'all all kind of like choose, and these are manly men, by the way, but they know to just like, you know what, let this queendom do their thing. We can't jump in here. So it's funny that y'all all kind of like chose similar personalities.
Yeah. We definitely got it from my grandmother, who was a
smart woman.
Yeah, very, women's advocate, very much a feminist. Absolutely. So that 100% was passed on generation to generation.
You see?
Yeah, that is so funny.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Dara. So in your weekly consultations, what are disconnects you notice between what women say they prioritize about their health versus what they actually prioritize?
Ooh. So it really depends on the age group, right? What I've noticed is that, let's call them Gen Z,
Mm.
when they come in and they're requesting services, they're really addressing insecurities that they've had since early childhood, right? So, I've always had this little bump on my nose. What
Mm.
can I do about it? Or I've always had super small breasts. What can I do about it, right? So it's more of, yeah, addressing insecurities. After having kids, that is when we start to see women coming in wanting to address things that have actually changed, like
Mhm.
physical changes. But, it's interesting. I just keep coming back to a lot of them apologizing for the way they look. Oh, I'm sorry that I had this little tummy, or, oh, I'm sorry that I have this stuff on my arm. And I'm like, you literally look like 90% of the people that
Yeah.
come through here.
Yeah.
Why are you apologizing for living a life? So, what do they prioritize? I guess the improvement, but I think what they should prioritize is like more confidence.
Yeah.
Like, where should you be if not here? It's like when someone who's on a weight loss journey
Mhm.
says they don't like going to the gym because they're insecure
Right.
about all the people around. But it's like, where else should you be on a
Yeah.
weight loss journey if not here?
Right.
Forget about what other people are saying. So yeah, to answer your question, I would like for people to prioritize their mental health more, because that, if you have a good mindset, it's going to
Mhm.
optimize your results. Again, whole mind body connection, accepting where you are in life and then deciding where you want to be and
Mhm.
being an active participant, I think trumps everything you can do aesthetically.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would
Hmm.
agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'm a living proof of prioritizing
Yes.
yourself and your health.
I
And
still get friends. I was at a friend's house on Sunday who, just killing herself, 3 babies, and she looks phenomenal. But she's like, I want the crystal treatment. And I'm like, listen, the crystal treatment, it's not as
it
easy as
costs
it
money,
looks. It
baby, and
costs
it is
money.
hard work.
When I tell you the amount of time and effort that you have put into personal growth after, I'm sure you talked about
Oh
it, but
gosh,
like,
my divorce.
yeah, your
Yeah,
divorces.
We're like, okay, girl, you mean plural.
Yes, yes. But like,
Yeah.
you literally got to work like in therapy, making sure you never make those mistakes again. It wasn't, okay, let me jump into the tummy tuck to
Yo,
make sure
God,
I'm
yeah.
hot. No, because honestly, I don't think you'd look like this if
Yeah.
that's
No, it's so
what you
true. Yeah.
prioritize, right? So I think that there's just like a lot of work to be done internally. There's a lot of trauma, I think, that needs
Yeah.
to be addressed. I feel like society has kind of given women a lot of messages that are just not true.
Right.
I never heard these messages
Right.
growing up, so I feel like they're much more aggressive to me than most who are like, oh yeah, this is just how it's supposed to
Yeah.
be. But not in my world.
Right. And I think also surrounding yourself with a community of people that support you and they love you. And,
Yes.
they like, I had that. I look
Yes.
back at pictures, I'm like, damn, girl, you was thick, like big old thing,
But they didn't say that to you.
postpartum.
Yeah.
But guess what? You can tell me nothing, nothing. I thought I looked like
Exactly.
$1 million.
Yes.
And so for me, I'm so grateful
Yes.
that I was raised, with that self love and that self confidence. I lost it, along the
Mhm.
way, especially, having infidelity in
Mhm.
marriages and all the things. But like, coming back to my true essence of who I am and who I was. And I knew that, getting that procedure, getting my tummy tuck was going to get me back
Yeah.
to, because I was doing the work. I
Yes.
was doing the internal,
Exactly.
and I needed the exterior to match how I was feeling on the inside.
Yeah.
And that really helped, bridge the gap. And so
Mhm.
I think, yeah, for so many women, it's like if you are around people that support you, like you feel that much more safe and secure and
Yes.
encouraged to do the thing that's going to benefit you.
Yes. And I definitely want to emphasize, when you said community, I want to say real community. Social media is just an amazing vehicle, right? But I don't want to say it's not real, because it has real life impact. I mean, we know, right?
Yeah.
But for example, so when I graduated from law school And, I'd be out networking or doing whatever. After I graduated, I always knew I would go back to school. I thought it would be for an LLM, which is kind of like a master's in law. But for some reason, I just knew in my mind, I'm like, I'm not done with this. So I would go out and I'd meet people and they'd be like, oh my gosh, like your dad must be so proud. Like you've achieved, what you should have achieved. And like, just like kind of pumping me up. I'm like, actually, like, you don't really know me.
Yeah.
I'm just getting started. This is an expectation, me being a lawyer. Because in my culture, you're either an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer, right? So I was like, I didn't really have a choice in terms of like achieving this level. And I'm just getting started. And so when you don't have a community that knows you, right? That knows what you're capable of, that knows your real weaknesses, then you're not going to get as far as you could. Seeking validation from social media or outside sources, it can hinder not only how you feel about yourself, but how you engage with people in the world. So community in real life, I think is super important.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So let's talk about solutions and advocacy.
Yeah.
You're known for focusing on solutions.
Yes.
What's one underrated innovation in femtech and health tech that could revolutionize care for women over 40?
Honestly, I love when I'm seeing about like these platforms that specifically speak to perimenopause.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of wellness brands that are essentially like telehealth, and they are diagnosing women with, hormone inefficiencies and providing care directly to their home. I think for so long when women are done having kids, it's almost in the medical industry, at least, it feels as if it's like, okay, well,
you're on your own.
Best of luck. Call us if you have breast cancer.
Yeah, it's true.
But the amount of care and attention that we received when we were having kids, it's a steep drop off. And when you try to bring it up with medical practitioners, and it's changing now, especially with longevity medicine, which I absolutely love. But, now you see women like us, even older, that are showing younger women like, oh, not only can you be beautiful, of course, but you can continue to thrive and have adventures and, the mood swings, we can keep those at bay. In the what was that? What was the biggest one for me? It was I just get so annoyed all the time, like you can kind of work on your mood and things that they were lobotomizing women for in the 60s and 70s and shoving antidepressants in our mouth, and it's like, oh, all we needed was like a little bit of estrogen or a little bit of testosterone. So anyways, that's what I love to see, just women thrive because now they understand how their body is changing, essentially like chemically, and being able to address that in the simplest ways.
Okay, so postpartum and perimenopause care are notoriously dismissed.
Yes.
What's your playbook for women to advocate for themselves in these areas?
Golly, I don't necessarily have a playbook as much as I have, in my opinion, you just have to be really stubborn about it. So I started Grio, which essentially is a baby bottle that supports cognitive health and emotional bonding. Because when I had my first child, I felt that the products that were being marketed to me were almost predatory in a way. They were playing on my insecurities as a new mom, that I wasn't doing enough. And then also I felt like it was isolating, right? I'm not the only one that had this child. Like I have a husband who is a very active participant. I have family members that can help with the feeding, but I felt as if all the messaging was like, you need to do this, and this is how
this is the mom's job.
Yeah, this is the mom's job. And again, not how I was raised. It's not. It's everybody's job to ensure the survival of the family. So I created Grio because I thought the feeding routine was just so hard. So the design, I worked with pediatricians, occupational therapists. The design was based on the idea that we need to come up with a Swiss Army knife, or a tool that allows other people within my caretaking community to feed this child in the way that I would want him fed. So he's engaged, so he's learning, so he's still bonding, because that period of feeding is nonstop. But again, nobody talks about that. Nobody talked about the stress, whether you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, of having to do something every 2 to 3 hours as you're trying to heal
Right.
from childbirth, right? So in terms of postpartum, it just takes I think you being angry enough to say, no, this isn't right. In terms of perimenopause and menopause care, I found that the biggest way to address that was through community, being around like-minded women who are sharing, okay, well, this is what I tried and it worked. Here's my doctor. There's a lot of sharing amongst women after a certain age. And I don't know what the cause of that is. But yeah, community is super important. Then for postpartum, you just got to be, mean about it.
Yeah.
This is how I want to enter this next phase.
That's so true. You really have to advocate for yourself. And like you said,
Yeah.
community is key.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
taking it back to the premise of my podcast, Crystal Clear Moments, was there a moment when you realized women's health advocacy was your true love and not just entrepreneurship your true lane, your path, not just entrepreneurship or aesthetics?
Interestingly enough, it took aesthetics for me to feel as though, wellness and health of women is really my calling. My husband, Dr. Chike-Obi, he opened 360 Plastic Surgery about 1.5 years ago after practicing for 11 years with another practice. And, I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but my direct involvement in terms of patient-facing care is when I conduct consults. And talking to women every single week just kind of solidified the need for advocacy. I had mentioned before that the apologies for deigning to exist, it didn't stop after postpartum. It didn't stop after a woman had her dream body and she's having this amazing life. It goes on into their 60s and 70s where they're like, oh, what do I do about this? And I'm like, what do you do about what? Like, we can do a little thing.
Yeah.
But overall, honey, this is amazing. And just hearing those words, like, you can see the wheels in their head turning. You can see them, getting more excited about stuff. And so it was really just like my work with 360 Plastic Surgery that I said, it's too disjointed.
Right.
This all needs to kind of be seen as a continuous, cycle. Right. That focuses not only on postpartum and raising a family and when you have kids and all that other stuff, but, a lot of people get divorces. People's spouses die. People's children die. Like lives, right? And just the community and just like, I want to put my hands around these women and be like, you've been lied to. Like, guys, we're so amazing. And I have 4 brothers. They couldn't do a quarter of the things that I do. Right. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Even my husband, who's so brilliant and amazing and I adore, he'll tell you, like, we wouldn't be able to have this if you weren't, like, holding the home down,
Right.
Like, I have to say, I'm an awesome mom.
Yeah,
and
I sure are. Yes,
I
look
killing
up
it.
to you
I
as a
am
mother,
killing
truly.
it.
You're raising 2 incredible boys.
Thank you. 2 incredible, kind, smart, thoughtful boys. But I'm sorry, what was the question? I feel like I'm going off on a tangent.
No, this is incredible. So I was just talking about the moment where you realized, like, this was your new.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So when I really started becoming directly involved with 360 Plastic Surgery, because it was just constant interacting with women across all life phases where I started to see how disjointed, our lives were, or our lives were perceived to be.
Sure. So let's talk about legacy and community.
Yeah.
You've built collaborations with institutions like UT and ARC, and your marriage to a plastic surgeon gives you a front row seat to the aesthetics industry. How have these partnerships shaped your advocacy?
So I'll start with the one with UT. Grio, my startup, was actually co-founded out of the Texas Innovation Center. So that is essentially the entrepreneurship arm of University of Texas Engineering Department. My co-founder is a chemical engineering professor there, brilliant scientist, all the things. But when we launched Grio, we went directly there for support in terms of connecting us with the best advisors, connecting us with the best manufacturers, understanding what kind of design works best. And I say all that to say strategic partnerships for women is very important. So an example is they connected us to one of the best manufacturers in China that actually makes one of the leading baby bottle brands here in the States. Had I have done that, just calling around, like who knows who I would have been connected to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So using the umbrella of somebody that has a lot of credibility, I think we need to kind of lean into that,
Mm-hmm.
right? When our bottles were manufactured and, hit the market, the first thing that we wanted to do is get validation from pediatricians and real specialists. So I started reaching out to see if we can do pilot programs, and we were able to get pilot programs set up with ARC, Austin Regional Clinic, and St. David's Healthcare, one of the largest healthcare centers here in Texas, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself provided instant validation, not only to our investors, but to our consumers. So I think my point in saying all this is it's very important for women to put themselves out there to larger entities that may seem scary.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do everything by yourself. In fact, you shouldn't be doing
Right.
anything by yourself. You are going to get a lot further when you strategically have people on your team. And the bigger those people are, the further and quicker you can achieve whatever objectives you have, right? So yeah, putting yourself out there whenever you decide that you wanted to do something, networking is very important.
Mm-hmm.
I know as moms, we don't really have enough time, but man, like just getting out there, shaking hands and kissing babies, as they say, it'll get you far. It'll get you very far.
Yeah, and in general, not just as an entrepreneur, just in general,
Yes.
it's like, and in our 40s too, that's such a good way to kind of meet new people. It not only benefits you professionally, but like personally. I feel like some of the most interesting, incredible women that you can meet, especially when making friends in your 40s, are women at these other networking events that are like trying to better themselves.
I love that you said that. So first of all, it doesn't even have to be a networking event. It could be something where you're like, you know what, I'm interested in, I don't know, crocheting.
Yeah.
Go to a crochet,
Right.
conference, right? That's where you meet like-minded women.
Right.
And I was having this conversation with friends last week, and one was saying, oh, I want more mom friends. And I'm like, what are mom friends?
Yeah.
It's like, I have friends that happen to have kids, most of them do, some of them don't. But if I'm going to spend my free time, my very precious free time with anybody, it's going to be with my friends.
Right.
And we'll bring our kids along. But we're not connecting on the fact that we both birthed babies, right? Like, you and I feel like we barely talk about our kids.
Right. So true.
We barely talk about our kids.
Unspoken,
yeah, because it's like, I know Jackson is taken care of. Like, between like your family and your friends, like I don't have to worry about Jackson. You don't have to worry about my boys, right? So let's move to that side and like connect. So I loved what you were saying about networking in terms of building your group. It doesn't have to be mom friends. Like, in fact, I almost want to say, don't let it be mom friends, because you are not defined by being a mom. You were who you were before you became a mom. Now, being a mom probably made you a better Crystal. It's definitely made me a better Dara, but I've always been this way since before I met my husband, since before I had kids. And since I've had them, I've evolved, I've grown into something bigger and better, but I've always been Dara, and I will always be Dara, right? So connecting with people that appreciate who I am and what I offer, those are the strongest connections, right?
It's so true.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me into my final question.
Yeah.
What are some tactics that you've learned from your marriage and collaborations that women can use to build stronger health alliances with their doctors themselves and their communities?
Oh, great question. And I know I say this all the time, but like self-love and confidence goes a long way. I got married when I was 30. By the time I got married, I was an attorney. I was making a lot of money. My husband had finished residency. He had already signed, the paperwork to start at this practice that he started at. But I say all that to say we were fully formed human beings, right? Our puzzle was complete individually. So when we got together, it just made an even more interesting picture. It didn't feel like, oh, he's completing me or I'm completing him. And most importantly, he didn't need me to realize the best of himself, right? Because you hear so many stories about people or men, I'll say, oh, she makes me realize that I can be the best. Like, no, he was
let's help you.
Yeah, he was going to be a plastic surgeon with or without me, So when we got connected, it was like, oh my gosh, this life can be even bigger and better than I already imagined. And I think that's really important because my observation, and I could be wrong, is that like, younger women will say, oh, I love this person because he completes me.
Right.
And it's like, well, you're going to change, right? Yeah. Like, you're not going to be the same person in your 30s as you were in your 20s. You won't be the same person in your 40s as you are in your 30s, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So that person that completes you, he's not going to complete you in 10 years, right? Because you're going to be a different person.
As are they,
100%. And so I would say, yes, be a fully realized human being with a developed frontal lobe. I think that goes far. And then also, you and I have had this conversation before, but not falling into expectations in terms of what your roles are. And what I mean by that is, I don't want my husband to ever expect things from me because I'm his wife, right? You should be cooking more because you're my wife, or you should be, I don't know, doing X, Y, and Z as my wife. Because then I feel like the only value I bring is when I'm being the best wife and not the best Dara, right? So in return, that's how I see him, right? He's a doctor, he's a father, he's a husband, but he's also an amazing son. He is the firstborn grandchild on both sides, which is a very big role in our culture. He does that well. He's calling his cousins all over the world, checking in with them. He's an amazing friend. And so I look at him when he, let's say, falls short of maybe he doesn't take out the trash when I want him to. And I'm like, oh, he's just a boy juggling all of these things, and he's doing it well with our family at the center of it. So you kind of give them more slack because it's like, oh, it's just Dara and Chuma trying to life together and grow this beautiful world that we live in, this beautiful community that we live in. So that's one. Know yourself. Number two, appreciate your partner as an individual and not for the role that they're supposed to play, because that will never... you'll never feel like it's equal, right?
Do you feel like that's breaking like traditional gender roles that we kind of all have in our heads? And how the hell did you come to this very like thoughtful perspective on life? Because I feel very much, people feel like entitled. That like, you're my husband, shit. Like, I want you to do the manly things. I want you to take out the trash. I want you, and not to say that you don't want your husband or that he doesn't automatically do those things, but like, it's really profound what you're saying, is because I do feel a lot of wives, husbands place that on their wives as the mom and the wife. And a lot of women place that on their husbands as like, you're the man. I want you to take out the trash. And, when you can kind of get rid of that, like that's pretty profound.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the self-realization and knowing exactly who and what I was before I got married and what I had to offer and what I needed to work on and so forth and so forth. So this feeling of like, why would you treat me this way? I'm definitely, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander kind of person. So if I don't want him treating me that way, then I can't treat him that way. And that's kind of the foundation of how I approached it. It may be different for somebody else, but for me, I got a lot of stuff going on, as do you.
Yeah.
So let's remove these labels. And I will say, it's still a very traditional household,
Yeah.
right? I cook because it's how I show my love.
Right.
I keep house because it's my mental, my mental space. Like, it just needs to be tidy. But it's not done on expectations. It's literally done on love, and even that makes a difference.
That's the difference.
Yes, that's the
It's
difference.
done with love
Yes.
and purpose
Yes.
and
Because I believe in feminine energy.
Yes.
We
Oh, yeah.
are nurturers. Like, we
Yeah.
are someone who wants to make sure, like, our little bubble is like it's safe for the people that we love. I genuinely believe in the difference of the sexes, but you definitely have to give a proud woman, enough independence and space to feel safe in her
Right.
femininity.
And that's a beautiful thing. I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm in a relationship where I can truly be in my feminine energy. And it's so nice.
Yes. Well, people appreciate it because I feel like you've always been in your feminine energy, but it may have been taken advantage of.
Right.
Because you've always been a lover. You've always been a nurturer. I say all the time, like, too much, Crystal.
I am at fault.
Yes. Lock the doors and turn on the alarm. No more. But yeah, no, I definitely think that you're in a place where, or you're in a relationship where someone appreciates it.
Yeah.
And it's not expected.
Right.
It's respected.
Right.
Because
that is the key.
Yes.
Not expected, respected.
Yep. Yes. Because he
so
knows,
good.
the way he looks at you, I don't know if we're saying names now, but the way he looks at you in terms of like a businesswoman, when we're at business events, you can see he's like, that's my girl. Like, whenever you're doing something with Jax, it's like, oh my God, what a great mom. Like, he looks at you as Crystal doing all of these amazing things. So when Crystal busts out a beautiful roast for dinner, it's like, golly, and she cooks and she keeps it home. You're like, so
I love that. I think that there were so many incredible things that you talked about today. I appreciate you so much. And I just like, that has helped shape my perspective, this conversation in terms of like, looking at your partner with respect and not expectations. That's so big. So I love that. You are definitely someone I look up to as a mother, as a friend, as an entrepreneur, as a wife. Like, you're just incredible. And so thank you for sharing your journey and your story. And I really hope that all of you were inspired.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yay!